Hello everyone, welcome back. We're going to talk a little bit more about economics today. I recently did a video that basically explained why our entire monetary system is a Ponzi scheme. Okay, so it's a debt-based system where money is created by people putting up assets. Okay, and when you go to the bank and you mortgage your house, the bank basically, through the banking rules, creates the money to lend to you. Okay, but what they do is they use that asset to create that money, which is no different than if you own the gold mine and you took gold to the bank. Okay, you're taking a real asset that has value. That's how the bank creates the money. But when they create the money, they don't create the interest. Okay, so what happens? They don't create the interest. So this happens across the board. So across the entire economy at this point worldwide, because the US dollar is basically an international currency, there's more US dollars outside the United States than inside the United States. Across the entire world, there's more debt. There's basically more US dollars that are owed, okay, than money exists to pay it. So that's the Ponzi element to this, okay? You have to have people continually coming into the system, borrowing to create more money, okay, so that the previous borrowers will now have money to pay back their interest. Okay, that's the Ponzi scheme element of this. And by the way, for those of you guys that don't know, my background is accounting. Okay, before I became a gun instructor, okay, I was a full-time accountant. My last position was a chief financial officer in an import-export company. Now, here's the thing: when you're doing that kind of work, right, accounting, finance, any of that stuff, this is not stuff that you learn when you go to school or you learn on a job, right? But this is stuff that you can kind of piece together because of your my background. I'm able to look at these things. I'm not the only person that has come to realize this. People have been talking about this for the last 20 years at this point. However, it's become more and more obvious that it's that our monetary system is a Ponzi scheme, and that it is inevitably going to crash. It has to crash at this point. And this is regardless of who is in political power. It doesn't matter if you got Democrats or Republicans in power or some other party, be it libertarians or socialists or whatever. The system is going to crash. And the reason for it is because the government has become such a huge component of the Ponzi scheme. Okay, so when the players in this Ponzi scheme was like basically 99%. The people, right, or the corporations, but 99% other than the government, all right, borrowing and spending money, the system was working. Okay, the government aspect of this has ballooned to the point where now, every year they're borrowing $3 trillion. Okay, so for those of you guys that didn't see my prior videos, a trillion seconds is 31,000 years, right? 1 trillion seconds, 31,000 years. The number trillion does not exist unless you're talking about molecules or stars, okay? So at the point, and this is some 10, 15 years ago, when the national debt started going into the trillions, right? The people around the world that understand what the number trillion is said, wait a second, let's take a look at this thing. I mean, what do you mean they're borrowing $1 trillion? A trillion, the number trillion is a crazy, insane number. So that's when people around the world that understand numbers start looking at this and saying, wait a second, they're not borrowing money from anybody. They're just printing this money, okay? The difference is that when you create money, you have to put up real assets to create that money, okay? But when the government creates money, they don't put up assets, right? They just basically give themselves an IOU. So where we are now, right, the government has become such a huge component of this Ponzi scheme, okay, that's obvious to everyone. And the obvious, anybody that looks at it, the obvious element is important for this, because a Ponzi scheme doesn't work when people realize it's a Ponzi scheme. It works as long as people don't, don't really realize what's going on, and they have faith in it and they believe in it. Okay, there's two pressures here, right? There's two pressures that are kind of opposing each other at this point. Okay, so the one pressure is that if people don't continually come into this system, okay, there's not enough money for people to pay their debt, because again, the interest has not been created across the board. Okay, there's more. The amount of debt that's out there, all right, is more, right? And that's the principal plus the interest, right? The principal plus the interest is a lot more than the principal available, right? The cash available to pay that. Okay, so the system depends on more people coming into this. And that was fine when the government was like a small part of this, because you can continually bring in more people, right, as the population grew. And that was the idea behind the system. It's an excellent system in its conception. Basically, the government messed it up, okay? But it's the best monetary system that I can think of. It scales to a growing population. On its own, it would have been great, except that the U.S. government completely corrupted it. By becoming such a huge part of it, right? So now they've got all this. They've got this debt. They're in a position where, in order for the government to continue to run, they have to continue to borrow trillions of dollars. Everybody knows at this point that understands money, that trillions of dollars don't exist. So everybody's starting to realize, right? Everybody's starting to realize that the government must print money electronic create money. So the two pressures that are in play here. On the one pressure, you need more money being created in order for the Ponzi scheme to continue to grow, right? But on the other hand, everybody realizes that it's a Ponzi scheme at this point. And what's happening is, from the businessman perspective, right? And by the way, like I said, I'm an accountant, so I advise lots of different businesses, and I have advised businesses over the years, and I still have people that, businesses that consult me. So the issue here is that when the government goes to now create more money, right, through borrowing, okay, everybody knows what's happening, and it's a race for everybody to raise their prices just as fast, if not faster, than the government is printing money. Okay, so in order for everybody not to go bankrupt, right? Because if you can't find the interest to pay back your debt, you're basically going to go bankrupt and out of business and foreclosed on. Okay, so on the one hand, there's not enough money for people and companies to pay back their debt. Okay, unless the government prints more money. But on the other hand, if the government prints more money, we're all going to see it, we're all going to know it, and we're going to raise our prices, right? And this is what's been happening across the board. I've been raising my prices in different businesses that I have over the last 2 years, like at an increasing rate, right? The second I don't even wait until they pass a bill that, I don't even wait until they pass a new budget, okay? When they're talking about, borrowing $3 trillion, right? When they're just talking about it, I'm already factoring that into my prices. And the same thing for all the other businessmen that I do business with, right? That I talk to. Okay, when the government is just talking about borrowing, printing up another $3 trillion, they are already raising their prices in anticipation of the government printing money. So everybody's trying to get ahead of it, right? Because you don't want to be lagging behind. You want to be getting ahead of this. So those are the two pressures that are inevitably going to cause this economy to collapse. On the one hand, the government must print more money in order for people to pay their debt. Okay. On the other hand, as the government prints more money, people raise their raise their prices, right? People raise their prices, and across the entire world at this point, right? All right, because it's an international currency. So around the entire world, people raise their prices so that the new money that the government printed is no longer enough, because the price went up. So you see this with the food costs, with the fuel costs, with the lumber costs, right? Even though you got your stimulus checks back in 2020, even though you got a small, you got a raise, it's not enough because the price of goods has gone up because all the people that run businesses can see that the government is printing money and are raising their prices to keep up with that. Okay, so that's why business is inevitably going to crash, because the government must keep printing money in order for the system not to crash. But as they keep printing money, prices keep going up. So then they have to keep printing more money. It's a never-ending cycle. I mean, and everybody that does business and knows business is onto this. And people have lost confidence in this. Okay, so most of the people that I do business with, or I interact with, or in the business world, they've all got like a backup plan, right? They've all got assets on the side, non-monetary assets. They're all preparing financially, right, for a crash. Okay, so what I'm trying to say to you guys, prepare. Okay, be prepared for a crash. If you took me to a different planet where I didn't understand the politics, right, and you just explained to me the situation, you said, hey, this is the situation. We've got this monetary system that's a Ponzi scheme. The one player, it doesn't have to be the government, but one component of this Ponzi scheme is dominant, right? Everybody's depending on this one person to keep throwing more and more money into this system, otherwise it will crash. Okay, and I'm like, okay, so everybody's realizing what's going on. This person has to keep throwing money into it. It's going to crash. I mean, the system is not sustainable. So even if you take me to a different planet with different politics and you present me with the same system, I'm going to tell you that this is not going to work. It's this is going to collapse on itself. The only way a Ponzi scheme works is if the participants in the Ponzi scheme don't realize that it's a Ponzi scheme, and we are way past that. So the question becomes: so what's the solution? What's the fix? The fix is a depression, unfortunately, right? The only way to fix this is like what we had back in like 1929. You pretty much have to crash the system, let the system crash, or it's going to crash anyway. The system is going to crash. There's going to be massive foreclosures. People are going to lose their jobs. What happens? If you think this out, if you're losing your job, you're losing your house. So let's say you were at a job where, let's say you were making whatever $100,000 a year, right? You lose your job. You know that, hey, there's no way you're going to get that money. What are you going to do? You will take a job for. Even if you were making $100,000, you're going to take a job for $20,000 or $30,000 or whatever. So basically, it resets the value of the money, because now same thing with the prices. If you got real estate, let's say you were getting whatever $5 million for a given piece of real estate in someplace, right? The system crashes. Well, now that property that maybe you thought was worth $5 million, now it's worth $500,000 or even worse, or even less. Now it's worth $300,000 or something. So. That's the answer. I mean, this system is going to crash. The fix is the depression. Okay, back in like 2008, right? We went through the same cycle. Right? This has happened. I've seen this happen like 4 or 5 times in my life. However, it hadn't gotten so out of control. The government was not such a big component of this, so it was enough to have a recession. All right. To fix the system, right? So what happened back in 2008, right? You have a whole bunch of companies, right? How they fix the monetary problem with the inflation? You had a whole bunch of companies laying off people, right? What happens when people get laid off? Well, they basically take another job that pays less money. Basically, and what also happens they lose their houses. So what do? Those houses that are foreclosed on, they're sold at a cheaper rate. So again, the price of everything comes down. Now you have deflation, right? That's deflation, right? When everybody's willing to accept less money, when the price of goods, services, land, real estate drops, now you have deflation. The situation in 2008, 2001, 1994. I mean, I lived through all that. I mean, there was one in the mid 1980s, but I was too young for that, so I really wasn't paying too close attention to that. In all these situations, what happens is companies lay off people, and essentially you have an employee swap. The people from this company go to work for that. This company lays off its people, that company lays off these people. These people go work for that company at a lower price. These people go work for that company at a lower price, right? So, and the reason why they do it that way is because if you're working in the same company and they say, hey, we're just going to cut your pay by 50%, you're going to be pretty upset, right? You're not going to be productive. You're going to basically probably you're going to be very angry, and you're going to probably want to sabotage this company, right? So what makes more sense is for this company right over here and this company over here, instead of saying, hey, we're going to cut everybody's pay by 50%, we're going to lay off people. So when these people go to work for that company, they're happy to be getting a job. So they don't mind that they're getting paid half the price now. They're not resentful. They're resentful at the other company that laid them off, not the new company that hired them. That's why they do things the way they do them, right? That's why, like, over the years as a chief financial officer, when I had to lay off people, I never went to people and said, hey, I have to cut your pay rate by whatever, 70% or 50%. Never, because I knew if those people stay in the company, they would be resentful, they wouldn't be as productive, they would hate me. Okay, it makes more sense to lay them off, and then a few months later, and what do you tell them? You say, business is slow, I gotta let you go. The classic line, right? That's how you do it. I mean, you never tell people anything other than business is slow and I gotta lay you off, right? Even when people were like bad employees, it's not worth it for me. I didn't want the conflict, right? Nobody wants the conflict of saying, hey, you suck at your job. No, you just tell them business is slow and you get them out of there, right? That's how it works in the real world, so we don't have conflicts. You just gotta get them out the door, right? So I'm shooting straight, guys. I'm telling you how it is, right? I'm 50 years old. I'm 59. I'm gonna be 51 in February. I've lived through all this stuff. I've seen it done, okay, many times over many years. So when the people are laid off, they go to work for a different company, even though it's half the price. They're happy that they got hired. They're grateful to the company, and then basically things start moving over from there. And that goes for another 8 years, for another 8-year cycle, and then the whole thing happens all over again. So I hope this video was useful to you guys. I was just trying to lay it on the line for you guys, just so that you guys can prepare yourselves. Okay, if you have received rapid pay increases over the last 5-6 years, you're probably going to be the first to go, right? That's the people with the highest pay increases are the ones that they're going to get out the quickest, right? Essentially, you've priced yourself out of a job. I did it myself, right? Back in, I think, in 2000 and between 1997 and 2001, every year I was getting something. I was demanding. I was demanding a 15-20% pay increase, okay, and getting it, okay. Basically come 2001, okay, when that recession hit, I was the first to go, okay. I had priced myself out of a job, okay, and the next job I got after that, yeah, I took a pay cut, and I was just grateful that, hey, I got a job, So there it is, guys. Hope you guys found this information useful. I don't think you guys are gonna like the video, but I just hope the information is useful to you guys so that you can, you can plan ahead. So thanks for watching. I'll talk to you all soon.